everyone. Welcome back to another edition of StarSound Speaks. This is Irlianna your host from the cosmos, StarSound Astrology. Episode 97. I'm so excited because Stormie Grace is with us. I have to say that you are just one of my most dear, I just adore you. Your light, your grace. I just get chills every time I talk to you, or I just get goosebumps all over. So we must be like soul sisters from another planet or something. I don't know, but you're just such a light. And of all the, we have amazing astrologers all over the world. And then there's something that you bring that I don't know. It's just really special and magnanimous. And so that's why I wanted you. That's why I brought her on today. Some of you might have remembered that I was on Stormie's show last November, and I talked about eclipse season, of what to expect with our solar and lunar eclipses in November, December. And then I just felt like I've got to get her on, because in that time period, she launched a YouTube, the Stormie Grace YouTube Academy. So it's free astrology education. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about lots of things. If you don't know Stormie, you're going to get to know her, and you're going to absolutely, I know you'll fall in love with her, as I have, because how could you not? so welcome, Stormie.
Yes, thank you so much. It's so nice. And it's always fun too when we've done each other's show, because we switch seats for a little bit. So it's right. Very, very nice to be here. And thank you for extending the invitation. And I'm just tickled. You're like my media sister. We were talking about that before.
Yeah, media sisters, because I know I don't think a lot of people, maybe I know I've done 97 episodes, and maybe I have already said this, maybe not on YouTube, but I was in the PR business. My first life, my former life before astrology, I worked on Madison Avenue for 13 years. I worked in PR agencies in Manhattan. So that was tough. I really got my baptism by fire in the media business. And so I understand that that when I heard you on another a podcast, I heard you say that you too, right? What was it that you did before astrology? And I want to hear about that. And then how did you get into, I always love to hear people's stories. How did they get into astrology? And I by the way, I never did tell the funny story of how I did, but I want to hear yours first, and how you were in the world of business and what you did in PR, and then how you got into astrology. So take it away.
It's a wild ride, it's just, you look back over your story and you're like, wow, okay, cool. So I ended up, in a roundabout happening of events, I ended up actually working in radio. I called into a radio show one day, and they were talking about relationships, and the way they were answering the question about it and giving this woman advice on what she should do was, in my opinion, pretty low vibrational. And I'm like, I get we got to get ratings and stuff like that, but it really hit me in an internal way that I was like, no, there's a better way to handle that. There's a more evolved way that's going to do her damage if she handles the situation this way. So I just got all good and self-righteous is really what happened. And I called into this radio show to share my thought on it. And they offered me a job.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't know anything about radio or anything like that. So I had to, go take some classes at the community college and become an intern for a while and that kind of stuff. But so I literally just fell into media that day.
What did they have? What was your job description or?
Oh yeah. Well, at first I was just an intern, and I was the intern of a morning show, if you don't know anything about media, to get anywhere near a morning show, you're either dancing around as a chicken or you're doing something right. right? Because the morning show is primetime real estate. And they would just
there
have
are movies made about interns in morning shows.
Exactly, right. And so it's like, so I at the time didn't realize how fortunate I was, but also that's what I was doing. So I was an intern and I would do things for the morning show, and then I learned to write copy. I learned what our account executives did. I did all of that kind of stuff, and then later transitioned to actually working at the station where I did news and weather. I was genuinely like a weather and traffic girl.
You were the weather girl. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. And I would be like, oh, good morning, Colorado Springs. Our eastbounders are dealing with some wicked early morning sun glare. Make sure you drop those shades down. Oh, it was the whole thing.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
The whole thing.
You must have been such a cute little weather girl.
Oh my gosh, just me in the studio with my little headphones telling you about the wreck to avoid, or, the product, or what, whatever. And I got to know radio in that vein. And then I moved into promotions and putting things together. And then how do we put it together on air and doing shows and things like that. So I got to know every area of like, how do you market and put this thing together, and how do you get it out there? How do you take 4 pages of content and bury that down into a 60-second spot, so
wow.
that was my like fall into it experience. And I do laugh because I say that I think at that point in my life, the universe gave me a divine intervention. It was just so tired of me trying to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up. And it was like, oh my God, you're made out of Venus and Mercury. Go talk about things.
Right.
Here, we will help you.
Go on radio.
Yes. And so they did. And so I fell into radio, and I just loved it. When I fell into radio, I fell in love. I tell people, I think that, and I've been getting married to somebody since I was like 4, right? Like I'm just a love bug. But with radio, it was like, this is the love of my life. Oh, nice. It was so all encompassing for me. And so when I walked into radio a decade later, and I got hit with like a little spiritual awakening that said I was going to leave radio, start a YouTube channel and do astrology, I was real shocked. And there were many, many tears. I just want to assure you, I was shocked. And
how did you get from, if I can just ask, how you were doing the radio, and then did you just start studying astrology on your own? And then you got that message that said, go?
No, astrology and the world of the spirit and the metaphysics has always been a part of my life. When I was about 6, my mom took me to a metaphysical fair, just local, in our little town or whatever, because she realized that I was experiencing the world in a way that my brothers were not. And that, I would see spirit, and that is still a constant in my life today, to watch energies move and things like that. So it was never a far cry from normal. But at that metaphysical fair, I clicked in and I understood astrology and the astrologer that I was watching. It was like being called back home. It was like I was watching her do something I had done 1,000 times. I just knew. I just absolutely knew. And that was it. But I didn't like hit the ground running from 6 and I was like, tell me everything. It's like I didn't need it. It was already there. So I didn't do a ton with it. I did a little self-study here and there. And as I got older, I did more self-study and, let it work in my life. And then I got hit with this knowledge that I was apparently leaving this job that I was in love with and going to open a practice. And I was like, oh my God. And then it like kicked in full gear. I started taking courses under Stephen Forrest. I found, a couple years later, as I was really more advanced in it, I hit Noel Till, and now I'm like just a happy portion of the Till family. And then everything else that my little mercurial nature could dabble into. And then I started a practice.
Wow. That's amazing. I don't think anybody, I would wager that us two are probably the only astrologers that were like in PR and media and then became astrologers. It's like just, yes, it's a Gemini Mercury thing, but it's just, talk about a higher octave of communication. And like with you, the weather, I mean, that was the cosmic joke. You were the weather girl, then you were really the weather girl, the cosmic weather. I didn't get to be a weather girl, but anyway, so maybe I'll just jump in here and tell you what I wanted to say on my podcast that I realized after I gave that talk to the channel, like, oh, I never did tell you this. It's a funny story. So there's a lot of new people here to the channel on YouTube. So just wanted to, you guys probably haven't heard it, but, for me, like I said, I would book people on television, radio, press tours, we do like newspaper, the people who get guests on, the CBS Morning News, the Today Show, I would book guests, and it was very, very heavy duty, hardcore, cutthroat, and I ended up taking time after many years there. I had a spiritual awakening too. And I'm like, okay, climbing the corporate ladder is not my thing. And there's something else out there and I don't know what it is, but I'm going to find out. So that was my spiritual path. And then I took time off, but I was, so I started to temp, and I worked on many of those like Wall Street temping. So I could devote myself. I wanted to put all my energy into my spiritual focus. So I go home and read books. I needed a job, right? I still had rent to pay and all that. And so I called it the chapter of my life of washing clothes by the Ganges, like simple things like don't use your brain, keep your brain for your spiritual expansion. Just do, a temping secretarial work, right? Leave the executive world behind and just do this so that you can, finance your spiritual studies. So that's what I did. And one of the, it was a Wall Street securities firm, and I was temping at, and there was this, hard to forget, there was this really cute guy that I happened to be in the same department with, super cute. And we kind of, hit it off. And so I invited him out. I had left the city and I was living on Long Island, and beautiful place, a house with this nice garden and all this. And I remember inviting him out. Hey, you want to meet for lunch? So he actually took the train out and had lunch with me at my house. And, I can assure you, he knew my name. He knew how to give him a street address, but that was it. He didn't know anything else. He didn't know how old I was, whatever. And I remember sitting in the garden with him, and he said, "Oh, so how old are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I think I was just 31 at the time." And I said, "Oh, I'm 31." And with that, he immediately goes into this whole thing. Like he said he was mind you, he was a finance, like a securities analyst, I can't even put my brain around what he did. I would never, I'm just not smart in that way with financial securities analysts, whatever, it's impressive, right? He had he was an executive level job. Well, he tells me that he's an astrologer. And I'm like, wow. And the only thing I ever thought of was, when we were growing up, it was the newspaper horoscope. My mother and I and sisters, we would, look, what does it say for Libra? What does it say for Leo? And it was fun. I didn't diss it. I just, but that's all I ever, I think most of us, my generation, we just had the newspaper horoscope. Well, he tells me I was an astrologer, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting, and he said, well, you're 31, you've just been through your Saturn return.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
what?
Yeah, like a Saturn. And I'm going, I have no idea what this man is talking about. And I'm thinking, okay, astrology, Wall Street, like that's not normally where you go. Astrology, Wall Street, Wall Street astrology. It's like two different worlds. And I'm like, okay, so Saturn return. Again, it's complete gibberish. I'm like, okay, Saturn, like this man is talking to me about my age and Saturn. What does Saturn have to do with anything? And Saturn returned, which means, I guess Saturn left. Where did Saturn go? I didn't know he left. It's like I had no idea what he was talking about. So then he explains, you've just been through a major life change. And he starts telling me stuff like the story of my life of the last 2.5 years. And my jaw is on the ground going, this guy knows nothing about me. And he's like reading my life like a book from this one comment about Saturn return. So I'm like, okay, that was a seed planted. It was like a moment of truth. Mm-hmm. It didn't germinate for many years later, but I started studying in the background, and then eventually, on. But that's how it started for me, a Wall Street analyst, Saturn return, And then,
absolutely, it happens when it happens, right?
Yeah, and I guess it was meant to be, and of course, and but a very interesting, not your typical. And like I said, if anybody had told me, and maybe you too, when you were doing the weather in Colorado Springs, like, hey, you're going to be astrologer someday, and I'm like, yeah, right. The cynical New Yorker in me is like, dude, crazy, And now I look back and I'm going, oh, okay, yes, I have, like you feel, we found our home. This is our home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know it is home for so many people. And that's why I'm so excited. I just want to cry. Where's my Kleenex? That you're doing this free education for everybody. I'm going to Achuta Baba's Nightlight Astrology. It's not free. Totally happy, brilliant man.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I love it to pieces. It's incredible. It's ancient astrology, as you know, it's Hellenistic astrology, and it's another level of language for me as astrologer, because I was trained, modern Western like most of us. But and there are many people now. Everything is exploding with astrology schools. Hey, Gem Sag eclipses. But the fact that you're doing it for free, I'm like, wow, that's sharing. Talk about North Node and Gemini, sharing knowledge with the masses. It's like, I'm just so excited. So you got this message, right?
Yeah.
To like start this, and then you didn't fight it, did you? Like,
oh my
no!
gosh, I didn't even have time. I mean, so natally, I'm a Taurus, and Uranus is in Taurus. And, even when we get that first little sneak peek of Uranus and Taurus in 2018, I was like, whoa, what is going on? What's happening? Like, something's different, right? And I couldn't put my finger on it.
You felt it.
Absolutely. And I have this whole talk about how when a planet ingresses into a new sign, even if it's nowhere near a planet or a point that you have or an angle, just being in the sign strums the vibration of things to come, is my experience. So yes. I was like, oh, okay, something's different. So, and I just kind of went with it, as I'm Taurus. So I was like, that's uncomfortable, no thanks.
Right. Don't bother me.
Change. Oh my God,
Right.
And so as it happened out this year, it was actually Achuta Baba. I saw that he was doing a Kickstarter. I had never even heard of Kickstarter. And all year long, as Uranus, through 2019, all through all of it, it's like I'm getting these little bits of information that are quite innovative to my way of doing what I'm doing. And I had also at that time, been saying, I was like, okay, well, what's next in my evolution? Like, where am I going next? And I leave it out there. I get out of the way of the universe after I ask, and I just get out of the way of the outcome. And I talked to Achuta Baba, and he's like, yeah, this is a thing I do. And I was like, oh, cool. Maybe I can do that. And I was like, I don't know what I would create with it. 48 hours later, we launched a Kickstarter. And I was like, oh, here's what we'll do. This community said in 2020, right now with the world the way that it is, we can't really afford the basic information or the basic education, and we want to study, right? And people were giving out scholarships, and astrologers, I really do believe, are doing everything they can to make it accessible. I absolutely believe that. I believe in paying for your classes. I absolutely do. But this was an opportunity, but it hit me like a lightning bolt. And I am telling you, I just was jaws on the floor that here I am, launching this big, like, come community, come fund this, and we'll teach you all year long kind of thing. Cause I'm happy to plod along in my little Taurus landscape, chew my grass, do my life, And so this was very much so outside of my comfort zone. Absolutely got the community involved, absolutely has the community involved in a way that I don't think, I haven't seen it done this way before yet. But it doesn't mean that it hasn't, but certainly not in the wild realm of YouTube.
Right.
We brought together, and, and in the beginning, it was supposed to just be 12 master teachers. And in the end, now as we're closing out, I think we have almost 40.
Oh my God, 40 teachers. That's crazy.
Yeah, they've shown up and they're like, yeah, let's do it. And so we're covering from the ground up, from the basics up. We've already started, we've launched.
Right.
We went from the very beginning,
right, Chris Brennan.
Yeah, what's even the election chart of the Academy?
Right, but that's
dealing with. Yeah, now we're through history. Gemini Brett brought us through the astronomy. Naomi took us through Egyptian concepts. Nice. And just recently we had Gordon Mullins show up, and he just did the introduction to planets and really has laid that out. And now we will continue to break that down. And all you got to do is access YouTube. Yeah. Just turn on YouTube and come attend class.
Just show up. Oh, that is amazing. So they can show up live. Do you have a live feed when they actually do their thing?
Mm-hmm. Yep, there's a live feed. there's a mix between the live feeds and also the premiere feed. And so either way, you get to interact with the teacher and with the community as like you're in class with your fellow students. It's just like the YouTube version, you know, and along the way, we've got teachers now too, because, you know, I mean, we threw this thing together, like threw it together. So along the way, we have learned, we're totally prepared to launch the intermediate course for next year, but we've also drummed up some supplemental PDFs and materials and things for people to continue to take with them for the whole rest of this year and learn with.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And then it's up forever. So for years, people can just drink from this fountain.
Well, it's up for a year.
Oh, a year. Okay. And then you fund the next year.
Yes, you get 1 year. So if you're like, I can't afford to take classes this year, or even if you can afford, but you're like, I'd like to see what the next generation of teachers are doing, come watch, because we're out, we're talking, we're sharing this deal. So come on.
So does that mean that you, after a year, do you take those videos down, or do you do something else?
We will take the videos down off of YouTube. Well, the idea right now is that we will take them down and we will actually consolidate them into something that all of us can then distribute if we would like to, or some other creative option. You know, we're still in the formation of, well, what will we do with them next? But something.
Yeah.
Yeah, good content is not going to waste, I assure you.
Yeah, right. No, not with that many. I mean, you thought you would have 20 and you have now, then it went to 30 and now you have how many again? 40?
There's 40 teachers right now, and it's a mix, right? Like that's been the other beautiful part about it, is because it didn't just provide, the Academy didn't just provide free content. We also hired inside of our community people who've been studying astrology as our TAs. So they come in and they answer questions and they're helping our students along with myself and my assistant and the teachers, right? So we created a revenue stream for people in our community. Then in addition to that, we have translators who have showed up. And they're being paid, right? And they're all in like this astro community of what we've got going on. It's really incredible. And we've got in our elective time, because we've got a couple breaks, because people need breaks. There's a lot to absorb in the beginning.
Yes.
So in our elective courses, we've got some very new astrologers showing up, and they get a space. They get to show us their work as well as these masters who've been practicing for decades. So, I mean, it is a community deal happening in public.
Now, do you have a forum, like a Facebook page where people meet and chat in between the classes? Is that where they get their questions answered? Or I'm just curious how that is set up.
Yeah, sure. So no, we didn't. We decided not to do that on purpose because we were like, oh my God, that's going to be so much. So instead, what we do is there's an entire just YouTube Academy playlist. And as people have questions or they wish to interact, they can do it right below the video.
Comment section.
We let YouTube, you know, if it's not broke, don't break it, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Easy peasy.
Yeah. And then twice a week, we have our Q&A days. So on Wednesdays and Saturdays are our answer days. If you've put a question, we're coming in to answer it Wednesdays and Saturdays. And then you've got class on Mondays and Thursdays. So
that's great. It's so organized. I just reading about it once it launched, I was like, oh my God, how did this woman organize all these topics and speakers and dates and the organization of, you know, what comes first? Like we had Chris, you know, with the history and then the astronomy with Gemini Brett. And, you know, how do you, oh my God, I mean, it's such a huge topic. And like, how did you wrangle all that? I'm just fascinated with like, thank you, scheduling software.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you, scheduling software. Thank you, very mercurial placements. And oh my God, thank you to my assistant, Sasha. Seriously, we have, you know, I essentially called her up and I was like, I did a thing. Oh my God, I did a thing. And we started formatting and formulating. And I am grateful for all of the training that I got from radio and the PR and all of that, because it has made me organize and to understand how things need to go. So I was able to quite quickly pull things together. And I'm grateful too that in 2020, I thought I was, I started the eat and greets, and I was having people over so we could meet and just share content with the audience. And I thought that's what we were doing, is that we were just getting together to do that. And I didn't realize that the universe had us meeting each other, so that as this comes together, I can go back to all of these people and say, hey, I'm doing a thing. You want to? And people have just said yes. They've just said yes. And I've got a waiting list right now for teachers for 2022.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, that I think is the testament to this community. I really do. So.
Yeah, we're all in it together. And it's so exciting that this explosion of astrology. I mean, oh my God. Honestly, when I went into really, professional practice, as it were, that was like 5 years ago. And I noticed by like 2017, 2018, when the Leo Aquarius eclipses happened, that's when I noticed this big boom in astrology. I mean, there were major media outlets like Forbes, Wall Street Journal, the New York Times that were featuring astrology more than once, like 2 or 3 times in a year. And I'm like, I know from my journalism background, usually a topic is not comes up again in those major outlets for like 2 years, but they kept covering it. So I knew, like, it struck a nerve, and millennials, and it was just starting to explode. And I just attributed it to that eclipse cycle. But it was interesting now that of course it kept going, and the bearing fruit into the Capricorn, the Cancer Cap eclipse cycle. But now we're in Gemini Sag. So it's this high knowledge being shared, North Node, the Gemini, which shared with the masses.
Right.
And so that I'm just so thrilled and excited. It's like, yay, it's happening. And that's, to me, higher education. I mean, we have our college degrees, but I look at kids now and I'm like, oh man, and you can see their souls are hungry for higher knowledge. And it's not just about the mundane stuff. I mean, I'm grateful for what I learned. It's wonderful, but this is something that feeds the soul. This is higher education that feeds the soul. My higher education, going to college, did not feed the soul. I mean, on some level it did, and intellectually stimulating and fascinating, but you've got that hollow thing in your heart and you're like, wow, what's going to fill that? So I'm just thrilled that this is astrology college all over the world.
It's happening, right? And I agree with you. I think, when we look at like these explosions of things that happen too, but most specifically just around astrology and tarot and all of those things right now, I'm like, man, the most natural thing that we have, if we take all of these buildings down, we've got the sky, we've got the nature that we are born into and we are innately and intimately a part of. And when we really want to know what's going on, we have to get back to that. So the more that we can, I think, inform people, and like you said, they're hungry. People are coming back to basics. And so it's like the content is just so timely, and to make it available so that people can start to understand the conversation. It's really interesting. I started learning Korean in this last year. And
wow. Why Korean?
Oh God, that's a whole other podcast.
That's another podcast.
That's another podcast.
We'll have you back for that one.
Yes, please do. But there's this concept in Korean that as the language was being developed, the king wanted his people to have something easier to be able, and something that was easier and something that was their own to be able to communicate with. So this is how Korean and Hangul came to be. And I felt like that. It felt like that was synonymous with what I was creating with the Academy, is that I was like, this needs to be out there, right? Like this needs to be a common other language that is available in this country and in this world, right? Just as easily as we accept Korean or Spanish or German or any of our languages, this needs to be an available language so that we can all start talking. And and it doesn't mean that you don't take advanced language classes down the road, right? Of course you need to if you want to know more, but this is a great place, I think, to, as a people, we're naturally called back to a language. Let's start talking.
Yeah.
Start talking.
Something, universal language. That's key. I love what you said a little bit just now about if buildings fall away, there's always, the sky is always there. It doesn't matter what happens on earth. There's things, you know, countries rise, fall, people come and go, this, that, and the other, history changes, morphs, but the sky is always, it's the same sky that, you know, Neanderthal people looked at. It's like nothing, that's the eternal part. I love that.
Yeah, to pretend like we've got something new to offer is just a hoot. I'm like, are you joking? That big old sky's been doing its best life. While we're down here doing whatever we think is the latest and greatest. Let's maybe learn to speak the language of that sky that has been constant when we've been so up and down.
Yes, it's constant and it's eternal and it's always there, and that says a lot. Yeah. And that's a different way of looking at things, and that's too, I mean, certainly, you know, I'm sure that everybody can agree that probably the if you want to call it the shadow part of being American is this, I'll put it nicely, the sense of entitlement. A lot of foreigners have talked about that. I see it as an American, but you know, this sense of entitlement that people, that Americans have long felt that they're, and many, most of them are blind to, which is, you know, why it's shadow. But when you think about the shadow, you know, the shadow self, and being, you know, just this sense of entitlement, I don't know. Let me see. Oh, I got to come back to that. Lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that? Oh, I'll think of it. Anyway, it was about a sentiment. I see it. Yeah, I'll find it. Yeah, sense of entitlement. Well, we'll put that thing on pause, just on hold. How about this? Where do you? I'm just curious. Where do you see astrology going in like 5 or 10 years? Like I'm. You know, my wish is like one day we'll have school, like elementary and middle and high school, we'll have astrology courses. I'm sure in the old days they did with their teaching. Of course, their teaching was, you know, like Socrates and the, you know, groups of disciples and gathered outside under the tree and talking and discourse. But not that we wouldn't welcome that back. That's pretty cool. Again, connecting with nature. But, you know, where do you see it going in like 5 or 10 years about this, our universal language? And just curious.
Yeah, well, I definitely think in the next 5 or 10 years, just on the global stage, I think that it does become another available language, like a remembered language. You know what I mean? It's kind of like Sanskrit, but less dead. You know, like so. You know, I think that it is something that we do welcome back in. I was noticing around YouTube specifically that there are many more channels and many more clusters of people teaching astrology to little kids.
Oh, really?
And as these things, and these are channels that have tons of subscribers, tons of views. So people and families and parents of this generation are welcoming that conversation to the table. And when we bring things home, it becomes a part of the culture for sure. So I do think that that is something that over this next 5-10 years, we can definitely watch it continue to take seed and to develop as an available language for sure. But I also think that, you know, inside of the astrology community over the next 5-10 years, what I see developing is a sense of better ethical practices, of understanding what we're really doing and how sacred it is to be doing it, and that words and interpretations and they mean things to people, and that people are tender. We can't just tell people, oh, you're a Scorpio, you're screwed for life. Like that
right.
You know, that plants seeds, that it becomes a language that is also embraced. I don't want to say professionally, but something about the professionalism of it levels up. And I think that we just see that just in general with Saturn traveling through the energy of Aquarius, of the astrologer. We do get more serious in our industry with what we're doing and how we're getting it done, because we want to offer the best language development available. You know, I think so. So I do think, and I do think also that if astrology and those who are either practitioners or enthusiasts, I do think if we're not careful, we definitely stand the availability to come under being governed, which is not something that I think that we want. But when things get misused and people become damaged from that particular industry, I think then it becomes called for. that it has to be
Right.
governed. So I do think, I think the light and the shadow is available in astrology. So, everybody listening, I encourage you, be serious about what you're doing when you're sitting with someone and you're doing a consultation, even if it's just a friend. We could be doing great good, and we could also be doing great damage. And you're not doing damage for you with that person. You damage all of us. When you win, we win. When you lose, we lose.
Yeah, exactly. My wish would be for people to really get, and I think that's what you're saying, Stormie, is, this, is to consider it. And this is what Achyuta Baba is so passionate about. Astrology is a spiritual practice. He even has videos on his YouTube channel. You probably know about this. And it's to be held in the context of a spiritual, mystical, sacred practice, to come from astrology that way, because unfortunately the world's listening for astrology in the mainstream has been, and yes, it's changing, but it's been, oh, this is fortune telling, and they kind of diss it, and they, my favorite thing is to say, I think that with astrology now, we're having our Mary Magdalene moment.
Yes.
Like Mary Magdalene was always, oh, she was a hoe, and it's like, no, then we find out, no, she wasn't,
Right. Turns out there's more to that story.
Yeah, she was woke. And so now we're saying, no, there's more to this than, it's not fortunately, but that lower end of things where people can surface it and not hold it in their heart as a spiritual practice. I know Achyuta mentioned that in one of our classes. He said something about, I think it was somebody that he knew when he went to India, and he went and he talked, and I don't know if he was a fellow astrologer, maybe he was a Vedic astrologer, and he said he was teaching somebody astrology, but he made that person chant for 3 years before he would ever teach them astrology and let them near a birth chart. Like he wanted to really ground how sacred this is, and like you were saying, the responsibility. Yeah. So coming into that mindset, whether it's Sanskrit chant or Native American chant, wherever it is, to hold the astrology in that really profound sacred space. I think as we all become more mindful of that, I think we are shifting the conversation, and it is going to evolve. And I think too, a cellular remembrance, people are just going to wake up to more of it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that people are already awake, and they've got their little straws out, and we're just giving them water holes to sip from.
I love it. The straw out. Yep. Yeah, they got a straw out. Let me see. There was something else I wanted. I'm still not sure where that enlightenment thing. I don't know where it happened to that entitlement conversation. It went somewhere. Actually, what comes to mind to me is the Sibley chart of the United States of America. I'm most familiar with that one. There is one, and I do have, it's one of my list of many things to do. There's a chart of the United States birth chart that uses Gemini rising, and Chris Brennan did a whole podcast on that, and I want to listen to that, of why he felt that was the more representative one. But I can see the truth in both, and like Achyuta says, astrology is like divination. It's not like one way is the correct way. So it's a moving picture. But the astrology with Sag rising would give that whole thing about arrogance and a cultural arrogance and the shadow of the Sag, right? The arrogance and the entitlement. So you can see that in the chart, with Sag rising. So, but anyway, it's interesting because you could see the soul of a country in its. I'm such a nerd around mundane astrology. I love it. I just gobble it up.
Yeah.
But people don't come to me saying, tell me about the chart of Korea. It's like they want to, of course, they got to know about their own life. And that's fine. I love that too. But if you really want to know the soul of a country, you just, you look at their, I guess at 11 or 12 o'clock noon, chart for the founding of the government. And you can tell a lot about the soul of a country. Yeah, it's pretty
beautiful thing.
Well, anyway, great. So your beat goes on, and your next class is going to be what's your subject? What's up next? Thursday. Yes. Today's Thursday. Did you have it already?
We decided to just do one class this week since it was a full introduction to all of the planets. We give people time to not only watch that, but go back and watch other lessons. And then starting out Monday, the 19th, we will have Jamie Lee is going to be coming in and giving us a one-on-one introduction to the sun and the moon. She's going to cover the luminaries to get us situated. And then from there, we will have teachers coming in for the next few weeks, introducing us one planet at a time and spending some nice time getting into that. So, I mean, it's a very slow crawl through the week or through the year to really make sure that your basics are in place. And then as we get into December, January timeframe, we're going to start to beef up the content a little bit and get you ready for YouTube Academy 2022, where we're going to go more advanced in our techniques.
Wow. So it started March 21st, spring equinox. And are you going to go through December, like calendar year December?
Well,
and that will
equinox to equinox. So we're doing one astrological year to the next.
Nice.
Yeah. So we'll be ready. And, you can watch, you'll start to see probably about October, we'll launch the Kickstarter so that we're ready. Because we did learn that we want to be a little bit more ready, set, go as we get into next year's. And then who knows what's next, but we're out here now. The content is available. All you have to do is access YouTube, access the playlist. It is free for you to do so. The videos are demonetized, so you're not going to see, to the best of my ability, ads pop up. There are some on YouTube you can't do anything about, but it's just an invitation to come and learn or relearn or discover whatever you need
or
to
remember. Soul remembrance.
Yeah, whatever needs to happen. It's an opportunity for you to come and join the conversation, though.
Nice. Wonderful. Awesome. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for doing that and for following your heart and following the guidance of the universe, because look what happens, right? Millions of people get uplifted. It's the gift that keeps on giving. That's what I always say. So
thank you for having me over, and thanks for supporting this. This is wild. This is just wild.
And so everybody, I just want you to know that I'm going to be spending several episodes interviewing some of these teachers. So you're going to get a chance to meet them outside of the classroom, like talking to them in the hallway. So I'm the girl in the hallway chatting them up, and you get to know them, and I think it'll add a nice dimension. That was my guidance, is like, oh, interview those people, so, and it's certainly a great place and expanding. I'm all about expanding people's minds, and especially with people who are just new to astrology, that this is not, Chris Brennan has his astrology podcast, those podcasts are for astrologers to astrologers. It's advanced, it's intermediate and advanced, as you know, Stormie. And so, I think there's a niche for everybody, and I'm just very passionate around to keep sharing astrology to the world community. And I'm just so grateful, because I think you have this mother lode channel, the fact that it's free and it assists people all over, and money's not an object. People have lost their jobs in COVID, what have you, but the soul hungers regardless of the circumstances. So this is a great thing that you're doing. So thank you so very much. So yeah, that's all for today. Very grateful, and we'll be certainly moving forward, and I'll let everybody know. We'll get more, we'll get some teachers up here and keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on. Thank you so much again for having me.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. Well, that's all for this week. And until next time, this is Irlianna Samsara, StarSound Astrology, StarSound Speaks, StarSoundAstrology.com. So thank you all for listening. Namaste. Namaste. Oh, okay. Let's see.
Yay. We made it.
We made it. Yay. I hit assign a new host, assign and leave. Oh, it's recording. Nope, we're still recording. All right, everybody. Bye for now. Nice to put glasses on.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I hate